Hello and welcome to Let's Get the Skinny. Today we have a slightly different kind of episode that I am very, very excited about. Today I am thrilled to have Ilana with us, who was one of my one-on-one clients from earlier this year. She also went on to join a 10-10 group program, and Ilana is a true example of what's possible with the 10-10 method. I can't wait for her to share her story because she has gone through a true glow up inside out. And whether you're curious about the method or just looking for inspiration, this episode is for you. Ilana is a low key, actually super famous and amazing animator and business owner in LA. She's also scarily good at accents. We might get into it later in the episode. And is honestly one of the kindest people that I know. Ilana, can you paint a picture of where you were before starting 1010?
Yes, let's jump right into it. So, where do I start? Do I start back when all that self-doubt began and when okay, let's do it. So I remember the first time I ever questioned my worth as far as just me as a person. I was like really coming into myself. I was maybe 12 or 13 years old and I was just noticing, I'm like, why do I hate the way I look all of a sudden? I'm like, I wasn't even conscious of the way I looked. And Um, the idea of hating myself, like, I didn't even know what was going on. I just all of a sudden, I just didn't like who I was or what I was or what I looked like, and, um, it created this sense of fear inside of me about, um I don't know, I would, like, avoid mirrors, and I just felt so unattractive, and, I was at that age where, like, everyone at schools, like, everyone was, like, starting to wear makeup and, like, it was I felt so out of place in, like, just my environment. I felt like something was wrong with me, and I think that phrase, like, "What's wrong with me?" Like, "I can't figure out what's wrong with me," like, that was always the belief, and it started so early on, and then it manifested into this, like, obsession with being perfect, and that sort of manifested into, like, how can I control how others perceive me? Um, and something really weird happened. I learned what dieting was.
That is weird. Yeah.
I was in 8th grade, and I remember we were on a class trip somewhere, and, like, I remember just, like, not eating the whole trip. Like, I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna eat as little as possible this entire like, I'm gonna challenge myself." I think, like, someone in my family was going on a diet, and, like, I wanted to, like, try it. I don't know why. I guess it was just something I was trying out, but I was like, "Oh, it's gonna be amazing." Like, after 2 weeks of this, I'm gonna be so skinny and beautiful, and everyone's gonna think this of me. Like, it was a way for me to control how others see me. And obviously I felt terrible while doing it. I was literally eating, like, lettuce and, like, just next to nothing, like, and I would get anxiety about, like, because it was on this class trip, right? Like, I couldn't control where we were going for meals and stuff, or, like, what they were giving us, and, like, I was, like, a teenager, so like, I didn't know what I was doing. So when I think back to that, I just think, like, that's so sad that, like, that's how I thought, and how I continue to think that way. And then it sort of resulted in, I mean, over time, that got worse, and I started obsessively, like, working out, not even from a place of, like, I wanna be healthy and fit, but it was like, how can I outrun my own self-hatred? Or, like, let's keep trying to control the narrative of, like, how people see me, and, like, my parents had a treadmill downstairs, so I would, like, do these insane, like, sprints on the treadmill. Like, I would be running as fast as possible, and I would be, like, eating next to nothing, and I was like, "This is gonna work, like, this will get me where I need to go." And, like, I was also not losing any weight, like, I was actually holding on to, like, I felt very puffy and inflamed, like, my body was, like, crying for help, and I was like, "No, like, it needs more of what I'm already doing." And that also sort of manifested into I took Hydroxycut, and I was 15, someone gave me some and said, "Don't tell your mom." And I hid them from my mom, and I was taking it was literally, like, just I mean, it's mostly just caffeine pills, right? So I was, like, waking up in the morning, like, drinking coffee on an empty stomach and, like, taking these and I would have, like, these heart palpitations, and I didn't care, though, because I was like, this will work." Like, I was just determined to, like, get a certain result so that I would be perceived a certain way. Um, 'Cause that's how it started. It's, like, the not so short story. So when I it's weird to be talking about this and looking back because it just feels so far away now. Like it doesn't even feel like me. But I remember how I felt in those moments of like it was all just a huge self-hatred, like just not liking myself, not accepting myself.
Yeah. And I think so many women can relate to that. I can definitely relate to that story and that time in your life where it's just like, okay, I think as you get a little bit older, you realize, okay, how I am perceived is everything. And so I'm just going to do everything to, get the love and the validation that I think I need. And then I think a lot of us go on to eventually kind of almost half accept ourselves. And I think perhaps that's when I met you, in the sense of, you some could say, oh, you're at such a dark place. And then others could be like, because I see a lot of women and they're sort of like, like I'm kind of doing the intuitive eating thing. I'm kind of doing this. Like I know this is there is this wisdom that eventually gets built. But where do you think you were, like, let's say a year ago? I mean, we met just under a year ago. What was going on? Because I think a lot of women feel like, oh, like I kind of eat intuitively, or like, oh, well, I'm not as bad as that story that you just said, right? It's like, I'm not like I was when I was, in the eighth grade. I'm not starving myself, taking diet pills, having heart palpitations, and still just caring if I want to be skinny. So, I'm doing okay.
Um, there was like a major life event in my family that triggered a lot of depression and anxiety, and that wasn't going away. But I felt there was just like this darkness around me, and um, I didn't know how to cope. And it's like I was looking for that sense of control again. Like I need something outside of myself to control. Um, But then magically, like, I mean, the algorithm is pretty amazing. Like your videos started posts coming up on my TikTok. I guess I was engaging with content that was similar to yours, but I was like, there was one video that went super viral of yours. I'm like, I'm gonna follow her immediately because I really like what she's saying. And like it gave me a sense of comfort and also like it was like a mixture of comfort and also like that structure that I was just very like curious about this. I'm like, oh, she seems awesome. And then like your videos kept popping up because I kept engaging with them. I'm like, I like her and she seems really cool and fun and like I would be friends with her. Like I just really liked you. So when your videos would come up, I'm like, oh, like I and whenever you would talk about like one of your principles of your intuitive eating program, I'm like, I'm gonna try that out today and see how I feel. And so that sort of gave me like a taste of what you do. And that's when I was like, I'm reaching out to her. Like after enough of those times, I'm like, I need to reach out to her. And another thing I was struggling with was I have like this hormone issue. I don't even know if it's classified as a hormone issue, but it's PMDD, so it's premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So for like 2 weeks out of the month, I'd be like so good, and I'd like literally eat so clean, and like I was doing all like the right things according to the rules that I set for myself. And then on the 15th day of the cycle, it's like I would literally like mess it all up because of whatever imbalance was going on, or just the fluctuations and the changes that we go through as women. And I would just like, I would be a bottomless pit and like nothing would fix it. And like I was starving and bloated and like nothing was working. And then I would feel so bad about myself because I'm like, I was so good the last 2 weeks and now I'm literally a monster. And then like every month this would happen. And then it became normal to me. And I'm like, I wonder if Kiki has dealt with clients who have this because I would not feel like myself for like 10 to 14 days out of the month. And I'm like, I wonder if she can help me with this. So that was another driving factor for me reaching out. And like, it has gotten so much better by listening to my body and giving myself what I need. It's
Yeah.
not gone completely. And of course, like when I'm not in tune with myself, it gets worse. And like, it's so insane how the body just communicates with you in all these different ways. And if you're
Yeah.
not listening to the whisper, it will scream at you.
And I love that you say that, because it truly is a whisper. And I think you've done such a good job of like finding that kindness for yourself in every single moment, while you're, whether it's in celebrating yourself or whether it's in, figuring out, okay, where's my, as I say, like, where's my learning opportunity here? What do you think made, because you are truly just clearly so successful with my method, with really living the principles. You got it right away, and then you just have really never left it since. And I remember one of my other clients who also did quite well. She suggested, she's like, it would be interesting for you to kind of ask all of your, high performing clients, so to speak, or the ones that get it the fastest and like in the deepest way, like what are the common themes within them, right? And so what do you think made you so ready for you to like adopt this new mindset, like, or this new way of living and interacting with food? Like, what do you think made it so that it clicked right away for you?
I think I was so sick of, like, the ups and downs and, like, the false promises of, like, once you do this one thing, you will never have you'll never be hungry again. It was like me avoiding hunger for, like, my whole life, and like, I was sick of drinking iced coffee on an empty stomach and not eating until 2 p.m., and I was sick of, like, the next big diet, like, that promises that you'll achieve this, like, unrealistic standard, and, like, it was just, like, the false hope of, like, "This time I'm finally doing it," and after enough times of doing that, you're like, this makes no sense. Like, I'm gonna try something complete like, I was also just very curious. So I think that curiosity was like, let's try this out. And if this doesn't work, like, we'll just go back to what we were doing before, which is not working. So I
Yeah.
was like, I have nothing to lose. And I was also at a point where like I was just really ready to invest in my well-being. It's not even about, like, being skinny and, like, unattainable and, like, this image, like, it was more about, like, I want to feel peace within my body and within myself, and I wanna uncover what was really going on because it seems like the food like, in hindsight, like, the food and, like, this perfection thing, like, that was a symptom of what was going on underneath, and I'm like, I was ready to figure out what I was running from. So I
Yeah.
think that's the long answer.
Oh, I love it. And you touch on, because I actually see these food issues in a way similar to addiction. And a lot of kind of experts in addiction, however you want to call it, talk about how it's not necessarily the behaviors or the habits, it's like the pain within, right? And I think you were so self aware as to like, oh, okay. I remember you coming to calls and being like, okay, well, this is sort of what's coming up for me. Like, this is, how I'm feeling. And I think this is the perception of, how I'm seeing it, and that's what it was. It wasn't, we weren't talking about like, oh, okay, do you think I should have, this sandwich or this salad? It was always so much deeper. With that said, did you face any moments of doubt throughout your process, and how did you work through them? Because often even women that aren't necessarily my clients will be like, oh my god, like I'm following your principles, and I'm losing weight, and then I know that they're gonna possibly come back a couple of weeks later, especially if they're not actually in a program or have any support. They're like, oh my goodness, actually I've gained this weight, or I don't think I'm losing weight anymore, or like, oh my god, I just binged again. So how did you kind of face these ups and downs, because healing is never linear?
Well, it was interesting because, like, I think at the beginning I panicked, like, when something because I think the first few days I'm like, "Okay, I got this. Like, this is actually really working for me." And I think a few days into it, I'm like, "Kiki, like, oh my god, like I remember just messaging you every time something would come up because I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, oh my god, like I felt so powerless, but also like it was like because it was so new, I panicked because I wanted to be perfect. Like I needed it to go perfectly. And like the fact that it wasn't going perfectly like for the 10 weeks, I was like, there are gonna be mistakes. So like recognizing that they're not mistakes, they're learning opportunities. Like it sounds so simple, but embracing the learning opportunity, like with each one, it builds. And I got so much better. And like I, s- I gradually like stopped beating myself up if I would like, you know, wasn't doing all the perfect, parts of your method. Like it was okay. And I'd say, okay, like it's in the past. Like it doesn't exist anymore. We're going to try again next time. Like that forgiveness was never there before your method. I would like, I used to just beat myself up and be like, well, you messed up forever. Like your life's over. Like that's how it felt if I would mess up. And like this was just so like flexible and in the flow of life. And like it
Yeah.
taught me a lot and it helped me trust myself and helped my body trust me.
Yeah.
So it was like this amazing symbiotic relationship. And I remember that first like cycle when I was like in that stage where like normally all my happy chemicals would go away and like the progesterone and the estrogen, like all that stuff would be going on. Like I didn't feel that dramatic drop of happy chemicals. Like I felt like myself
Yeah.
until maybe the day before my cycle started. And I was like, I can't believe how normal I feel. So
Yeah.
that's what made me really believe in what was going on.
And I knew that that was possible for you because of how I remember you asking, like, have you dealt with women that have certain, hormonal imbalances before? And I was like, yeah, and it's not going to be a big deal. And I could tell you weren't going to fight me on it. You were like, okay, I'm going to believe whatever she dishes out. And honestly, I do think that that is one of the key things that I look for when I do speak with someone. That's kind of interested in my program, if they're going to really fight for their victimhood, like it's not going to work. But you were always like, I felt like we could be like, Lana, like we're going to turn you into a fairy, and then you'd probably be like,
Great. Let's do it.
like curious as to how that's going to go, right? And now you spoke a little bit about in this before we were recording, in this last little while, you've felt some major shifts. And I often hear that. And I know I can definitely relate in that the first few months, maybe even year, you're really kind of just getting your footing back with with eating, with hunger, with your taste preferences, with actually eating foods that you love. And then like deep, crazy shifts happen because I think you're finally living in your body in this like true connected way. And I know this sounds so woo, but it's just so true. Once you really step inside yourself and then live that out, like certain things can really, really change on the outside. And, I don't want to go too deep into the details of your life, obviously, to give you some privacy. But can you talk a little bit about maybe what's happening for you in the past little while? Because oftentimes I do see these shifts, 6, 9, 12 months later.
Yeah, like there's like this deeper level of trust in myself and what the universe has in store for me. And yeah, it's been like a crazy few months for me. Like I moved apartments and like all this stuff was just happening that felt like against my will. And I was like, why is this all happening? Like, oh my God, it's so chaotic. Like, oh, but then every time I would say it was chaotic, like things would get more chaotic. And I'm like, oh no, I need to be careful with what I say because like
Yes.
I'm gonna assume that that's happening and it comes back to me. It's like, I was like, okay, like we're not chaotic anymore. Like we are calm. Like I'm calling my energy back to myself. Like, so I'm realizing I'm like, I have more of a say in this than I thought I did. So now there's this more trust, not only in my body, but in the way that I live. And I quit my job over a year ago to pursue my own business. And there was so much fear. I was clinging to that fear of like, what if this doesn't work out? And I think I had a similar fear in this endeavor with your method as well. But I was like, oh, what if it doesn't work? But like, I had to be willing to try and like the curiosity was more important to me than like the doubt, I was more like let's do it. I'm ready. Like I was ready. And so when I quit my job, I was full of fear, and now I look back and like it's been over a year now and I'm like I still have a roof over my head. I'm still paying my bills. Like I'm able to look back at the evidence and say I've trusted myself for this. Like I've come this far.
Yeah.
So why can't I continue to keep going further? Like, why not? And I'm starting to see the world as like anything is possible. Like, I decide what happens to me. I decide what I do. Like, so it's more of like I'm on my path instead of like I'm on this crazy chaotic road where like the path it just is what it is. Like I no longer accept. I'm like, no, we don't have to go down that path. We can make our own.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of carrying um that that flow mentality into the rest of my life. And like I used to sort of overplan everything, not just the food stuff. Like I used to be like, okay, I'm going to eat this at this time and I'm not going to eat till 2 p.m. I'm going to intermittent fast for the rest of my life and like only drink black coffee. Like it was kind of insane, but it would do that, and then I would also do that with my schedule and my work, and like it mirrored what I was doing. Like because you said in your method, like how you do one thing is how you do everything, and it's so true. Um, so I find that that has really stopped, and I'm so grateful because my mind is so much freer to think about other things other than like controlling my food stuff. Like I can now think about the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question, but that was kind of where I
Absolutely.
was going with
And
that.
no, I think you're getting at the fact that, yeah, life opens up again and space becomes available for what you actually want to do, right? We don't have to fill that with waiting until 2 p.m. to eat and black coffee. And you've mentioned the black coffee thing quite a bit. What's one of or a few of the foods that you now eat that you, if I would have told you a year ago or 2 years ago, like, Ilana, you're going to eat these kinds of foods and you are going to be as skinny and healthy as you've ever been. And you would just be like, you are insane. That would never happen. Because I remember in some of our sessions, you'd say, like, oh my God, I'm in XYZ city right now and I'm eating this and I'm feeling so amazing. Can you share a few of those details? Because I think it would be really inspiring for other women to hear.
Oh my God, you're gonna love this because I did a photo shoot last night in Hollywood actually, and I stayed at the hotel because I was like, I deserve a hotel night out. I like splurged on a beautiful hotel room. And in the morning they had room service and I'm like, and I looked at the menu and there were croissants and I'm like, I'm obsessed with them. And I saw they had a plain one and a chocolate one. And I'm like, oh, which one do I want? Like, And I just got both because I'm like, I'll have a few bites of both. And I'm like, who is she? Who is she? Like, I got a latte too. Like I just like went for it and I'm like and because I trusted myself. I'm like, I'm not gonna overeat. Like I'm just gonna eat as much as feels good for me.
Yeah.
And I don't like my past self would be like, "What? You can't do that. Like that's for other people can, but not you."
Yeah.
So for me, like, I mean, croissants are a big one. Like I'm like a huge fan. Like they're so perfect. Like every time I go to New York, I'd literally be afraid of like going out to dinner because like New York's like pizza and pasta and like there's a million different delicious places to go out and I ate so much pasta and pizza and like I love every minute of it. Like I'm no longer scared of being hungry. I'm no longer scared of food. Like it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like I love it now.
What would you say to someone who's listening to this and I know what they're thinking. Well, that works for her, but
Exactly.
it would never work for me because I'm, the special unicorn that can never be healed. And of course she can do it, she's beautiful and she's probably just naturally thin and like, you know what I mean? Next, what would you say to that person?
It's funny because like people always tell me like, "Oh, like you're so naturally fit." I'm like, "Well, if you had met me before, I'm just listening to my body now and like I guess it's just a byproduct of trusting myself." Like it's crazy. So like even like I'd on the outside be looking at me and being like, "Oh, like wow, like she's just saying all this because like what like whatever." So I would say like no, like you can have this too. You can have this peace within yourself and your body. You will never think about like avoiding carbs or like intermittent fasting or like any of that ever again. Like you will just eat whatever you feel like eating, whatever your body tells you. You will eat when you were hungry. And like it feels so normal now, but like that was like a foreign concept to me. I'm like, "Wait, like what are you talking about? Like people do that?" Like that's crazy to me. Like it made no sense to me before I started and now I'm like I can never go back to what I was doing before. Like I was so miserable doing all that. So I want to stress that it is possible. Yeah, you can do anything you set your mind to. I mean, it's going to take some practice to undo all those limiting beliefs because that's what they were. They were beliefs I imposed on myself just from all that experience growing up with that culture. But I'm so proud that I was able to unravel all that and say, no, we don't do that anymore. Like, this is who I am now.
Yeah.
And like, of
And
course, I'm not perfect. I have off days, but I'm like, we're going to forgive ourselves today. Like, it's fine. Like, I ate a few too many bites of this amazing pasta that I got. Like, it's not the end of the world, but it used to be the end of my life if I
yeah.
ate a singular bite of pasta. So like, which one would you rather have? The one where you love yourself and you're like, "Oops, like I'll be better later. Like I'll wait for hunger." Or like, "Oh my god, like my world is over." Like I would much rather have the peaceful one. I think you would too.
Oh, absolutely. And I think so often we think that we have to be so mean to ourselves in order to boot camp our way back to thinness and skinniness. And it's so funny what you said, where it's like, yeah, everyone just thinks I'm naturally thin. And it's really is true that when you connect with yourself, when you honor what it is that you need and what it is that you don't need, the byproduct is you become thin, and then everyone else says it's your genetics or, oh, that's just how she is. She's just thin. It's like, No, she's just respecting herself and is connected with herself. And I remember I did one video on this sort of topic, and it really got the wrong, a lot of people got the wrong perspective that I was just sharing of, thin women. Yeah, we can look at them and just be like, oh, well, whatever. They're either they're dieting all the time, or oh, it's just their genetics. Or we can look at them and be inspired as to like, oh wow, that woman is deeply connected with herself, at least in regards to hunger, which is such a key component of really connecting with your raw available identity. Now, I know that you have since gone on to kind of explore how you can help others in a slightly similar but different way as it relates to fitness. I would love to hear a little bit about your journey with fitness. Have you always been into it? And how are you now kind of building that out? And what do you hope to share in that regard?
It's so funny because, like, it's so incredibly new that I'm actually I think this whole process inspired me to start this, like, fitness, like, and it's almost like an intuitive fitness approach.
Love it. Own that. Intuitive fitness.
Yeah. And, I'm actually calling it, like, magnetic fitness because it's like you're building your own magnetism as a person. You're like it's like that law of attraction kind of vibe, like, you're becoming a magnet to the things that you want. Um, so I have the same kind of backstory with the fitness as I did with the food because it was so rooted in self-hatred, right? So, like, I would exercise because I hated myself and because I was trying to mold myself externally into this, like, this thing, right? That I it was never gonna happen in that way, like, built on self-hate, and now I'm like, I something shifted in me last week where I was so down about something, and I just looked at myself and I'm like, "What would make me feel better right now?" Like, why don't I force some happy chemicals into my body by going to the gym? Like, you can't be sad after going to the gym. Like, this is just not possible. So I did like an incline walk and I was like huffing and puffing and I was like loving it though. And I'm like, wait, I can't believe I used to do this because I hated myself. And I would like it, and I'm like, no, like I'm doing this for myself out of self love now. So even me going to the gym for the first time in months after doing this program, it inspired like an entire new identity with physical exercise and activity. And I'm like, wow, like I think I should really talk about this with people because I think it could, it's all in those limiting beliefs. And um it's just a TikTok right now. So I have like a separate I'll link you to the TikTok page. So it's really just me talking to the camera being like, you can go to the gym if you want. Like, you don't have to go to the gym, but if you want to feel good, go to the gym. Like, don't be afraid of what you look like when you go to the gym. Because I know we all worry, like, oh, what are people going to think of me if what if I don't know what I'm doing and everyone's going to be looking at me? Like, so I'm going to be talking about things like that and just the mindset behind. Because I'm not a trainer. Like, it's not even about the kind of exercise you do. It's just what you're thinking about yourself while you're exercising. So that's what I mean by the intuitive approach. So
Yeah, I love
it's
it,
just
and
an
it's just
exercise version of what you're doing.
I love it. And it's interesting because, we can look at someone eating a salad, and this another person eating the exact same salad, and one person might be eating it from this place of like, okay, I can only eat salads, I can't eat carb, blah, blah, blah. And then the other person might be choosing it because there's still foods that I eat that I ate when I was under the spell of very disordered eating, but now I eat them from a place of actually, this food makes me feel really good and I enjoy it and it's nice. And then of course there are other foods like rice cakes that I will never touch again. But I think it's the same thing with, as you said, like being on that treadmill. Like it's like, oh, was it when you were in the eighth grade, in your parents' basement, running on that treadmill to like, just shrink your body at any cost? Or is it now you being on the treadmill, at a slight incline, huffing and puffing because you deeply appreciate and honor yourself?
It was very much like, I deserve this time for myself because my limiting belief with the gym recently, like, was like, "Oh, I need to work for 10 hours and then I can go to the gym." And I said that out loud and I'm like, "That literally makes no sense." Like, it was rooted in that, like, I need to overwork myself until I'm exhausted and then I can go. And I'm like, "That's never gonna happen realistically, first of all." But, now I'm like, no, it's important to me to carve out that time in my day because I choose how my day goes. And I know I will feel the best in my body when I do this for myself. And like, now it's like a non negotiable. Like, I don't know what happened, but I was just like, okay, we go to the gym every day now.
Yeah.
Who is she?
And we order both croissants.
Yeah, I literally had a few bites of each, and it was, and I felt so good. I'm like, I got to choose what I did with my morning and my
Mm,
day.
always comes down to choice. Girl,
Yeah.
it has been such a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable with your story right from start to finish. And what I absolutely love about you as well is when you then went on to join a collective, a group program, you were also really open, not only with your wins and inspiring others of like, no, don't worry, it gets better. Like, look at me now, blah, blah, blah. But also when it's like, you know what, having a moment here, a little bit stressed about this. And I think that's so key. It's recognizing that you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be you. And sometimes we disconnect, and then it's just an invitation to reconnect. So if you're interested in learning more about 1010, whether it be working with me one-on-one or in my group, you can go to my website. If you're interested in following Ilana on TikTok, which I definitely am, did you want to share your handle, or is it like still is it still possibly in the works? In which case, I'll share it in the show notes.
It's yeah, you can write it in the notes, but it's my name, Ilana, and then the word artist, and they're blended together. So it's ILANARTIST, Elan Artist. So you will find me pretty easily.
Beautiful. I will make sure to link that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Ilana.
Thank you, Kiki.